Good evening and a good Woch, and welcome to the daily Rambam Shiur, lesson 216 and 217, Hilchis Metamme'ey Mishkav uMoshav, from chapter 10 until 13, and Hilchis Shar Voice Tumois, Perek Aleph and Beis. It is customary always on Motzei Shabbos to start with Hasidic story, and especially in connection with the subject of the daily Rambam Shiur. So we have just came from Yutes and Yud Kislev, where we have marked the birthday and the Histalkus, and as well the Chag HaGeula of the Metamme'ey Rebbe. And I thought it would be appropriate to share two stories. One of his younger years as a child. Once upon a time he overheard a conversation between two Chassidim. One of them is quite famous on his own right, Rabbi Munkes, where he was turning to another Chassid that he noticed he was very sad, very depressed. He asks him, "What bothers you?" And he tells the tough economical condition in the parnasa, the challenges to make a livelihood. And for that reason he is so sad and he is concerned. And at that time, the Metamme'ey Rebbe, when he was a child, he stood up and he says, this is what we say in Tehillim. In the Shabbos morning prayers, we recite a passage of Psalms where we refer to Atzabeihem Kesef Vezohov Masa Yedei Odom. So the literal translation, we are referring to the idols of the nations made out of silver and gold, and they turning to them for hope, for help, for assistance, and nothing they can do for them. However, according to the Metamme'ey Rebbe, as a boy, he interpreted the pasuk the following way. Atzabeyim in Hebrew is from the same roots of etzev, sadness. Why is he sad? Because he thinks kesef vezohov ma'aseh yedei odom. If a person can accomplish and can possess wealth which being represented by gold and silver, he thinks that this is ma'aseh yedei odom. It's all up to the person, when in reality it is only up to God. But from an attitude that he thinks that Kesef Ezov is dependent upon the person himself only, then Einaim lohem velo yiru, they have eyes but they don't see Hashgoche Protis that is surrounding them on each and every step of their life. And Pelohem, although they have a mouth and they speak and they discuss Torah and Chassidus, however, Veloy Yadaberu, those ideas that they are sharing amongst them, they are not capable to lead them in the right path and direct their life, because the term Yadaberu can tolerate also the meaning of Yadber Amim Tachteinu, we lead. So leadership, it can be translated also in the form of Yadber. And on top of it, Oznaim lohem velo yishmor, they have ears but they are lacking the sensitivity of anything that is godly. And towards the last Shabbos, while he was in prison, a year before his Histalkus, which was basically the last Shabbos in prison, he said a maimer that is also based upon the prayer of Shabbos in Minche regarding Ato Echod Veshimcho Echod Umiki Amcho Ki Yisrael Goyechod Boretz, reference to the unity of God, that though he is one and his name is one, he gave a mission, Ki Amcho Yisrael, to his nation Israel, such a nation that their entire purpose is to bring echod, unity, ba'oretz, in earthy matters, in the material world, into the physical world, to bringing godliness and spirituality. And when a person, I guess, he is not entirely devoted for one reason or the other, where he is losing sight and instead to prioritize the idea of unity of God and turning to the Oretz as a mean in order to bring the final goal of Achdus Hashem into the earth, and his instead Oretz becomes by him the primary goal. In such a case, it will be more appropriate to call him as Am Ha'oretz, because generally speaking, people are referring to Am Ha'oretz, a person who lacks knowledge, intelligence of Torah matters and halachic issues, though we will soon find out that even from halachic perspective, Am Ha'oretz is not necessarily a person who will lack knowledge, a person who lacks more sensitivity and care towards real values. And in fact, the central subject of today's Rambam is around what is called Am Ha'oretz. The individual that, again, both as a result of his lack of knowledge, lack of care, lack of sensitivity, there is no way to rely on his object and on himself that they are in state of purity regarding any ability to enter to the temple and consume Kodoshim as any direct involvement in him. And therefore the entire attitude towards him, though I don't have any certainty, but halachically he will presumed that he is in a state of tumah, including his garment will be considered tomei. And further than this, that any mago, any direct physical contact they had with any object of tahara, of a pure item, let it be oichlin, mashkin, any food or drink, so though their entire tumah is only mitzad sofek, only because of doubt and only because of presumption, nevertheless, I will burn the tumah as a result of their direct contact with those objects. And they will always going to be in this state until they will accept upon themselves divrei chaveirus, acts of the word chaveirus, literally translated, can be friendship, but in that context of Tumah and Tahara is a individual who is careful and pays attention to a very particular and respective attitude towards Kodoshim. And in order for Am Ha'oretz to become a chover, first of all, he needs to accept the commitment that he will treat Kodoshim the way they deserve to be treated. He needs to be careful in Etilas Yodayim to wash his hands anytime before he is getting involved in items, products which are pure. He needs to take a commitment that he should not expose himself to tumah, that he won't be hosted by a person who is Am Ha'oretz. All those acceptances are very critical, because if he declared openly, outright, that he is accepting some not all the above mentioned commitments, then I won't accept him to this club. However, if we have seen him that he, on his own initiative, behaves in a proper manner of respect towards Kodoshim, I will accept him and train and teach him later. If it is the opposite, if we haven't seen him yet that he is in his own initiative, is willing and actually respecting Kodoshim, but nevertheless he expressed a will to become a chover, so then I will teach him first, and later, after I have determined that he has the proper knowledge and care, then I will accept him to the so-called Chaverim club. There is one exception. If a person declares that he will be careful for Netilas Yodayim, though he did not declare about other chumros, I will still accept him. If a person took commitment that he will follow other scrutinies and other chumros, however, he is not willing to accept Netilas Yodayim, then I won't accept him. The acceptance of people into the state of Chaveirus must be done in front of 3 people, and after he was already accepted, so the level of trust and reliability expands also towards his family members, and they will be reliable and they will remain reliable even after his death, until a suspicion will occur. Further than this, if a wife of a chover who died, she married to an Amoretz after his death, so despite the fact that her new husband is on a suspectable status, she will still remain the chazoko of Chaveirus. The attitude towards her will be an attitude of trust and reliability. Though Chaveirus, a level of trust, can expire or be suspended in a case when a person changed his behavior. For example, if a person became involved in tax collection for the king, or any type of involvement for the king, which were notorious jobs, which were associated with corruption and so on, so then his trust being suspended. If he left the job, then in order for him to become a chaver, he needs to restart the process again. Again, as we have mentioned, to go in front of 3 people and declare that he is willing to take all the commitments which are associated with Chaveirus. If a person breached the trust, for example, he was selling items as pure when in reality they were tomei, he is losing his trust forever until a full tshuva will be conducted, similar to what we have already learned in Ilchois Ma'acholis Asuris, where a person demonstrated willing to lose a substantial amount of money just in order to keep to the principle of kashrus and so on. Generally, when a person is losing his trust in a specific area, not necessarily he lost the trust in other areas. However, if it is clear that a person was able to violate crimes which are severe, then automatically things that are less severe, the breached trusted as well, because if he was not deterred to commit heavy crimes, what will stop him from committing lower types of crimes? So when I say that a person was not losing trust in areas that he was not demonstrating breaching the trust, is only when the level of severity is equal or in higher. But in case that we are dealing with lower level of severity, obviously the trust was breached automatically. Regardless whether a person have lost the trust, he will still be able to be trusted when he's testifying about someone else. The reason, a person ein odom choite velo eloi, a person will never commit any sin when he directly is not gaining any direct benefit. For another person, a individual is not going to commit a sin in order that another person should benefit. The second chapter is dealing about different exceptions to the rule where Am Ha'oretz will be reliable, though generally, as we have said, they are suspected about Taharis, but nevertheless, there are some exceptions. For example, when it comes to Taharas Chatos, as we have discussed in Hilchos Poro Adumo, due to the severity of Mei Chatos, the water that are being sprinkled from the ashes of the Poro Adumo, since it is a very serious matter, so even Amei Ha'oretz will be trusted. Also, they will be trusted when they are testifying about the purity of wine and oil that were used in connection to wine offerings and oil offerings in the temple. Another time, a seasonal time, when they will be trusted at the time when the wine press and the olives are being made to produce oil out of them. And in those times, they obviously going through the process of purification, and they are very careful not to tamper with the level of purity, because it is bad for business. They will lose customers. For that reason, in that season of the Gitois, Gitois is, as I said, it's the wine press and the oil press, they will be reliable. Even after the wine press season, if the full supervision of the Kohen in the process of them giving tumo to him is being done with full supervision, then they will be reliable. Then sometimes even a person who is not a Kohen will be reliable if he gets from him type of fruits that they are not susceptible to tumo, which means in order for any fruit or any food to become tomei, initially as a prerequisite, it must come in contact with any liquid, with 7 forms of liquids. If, however, it is clear that the particular fruit was not in any exposure to liquid, it remains in a state of not being susceptible to tumo, and as such, Ha'oretz can give them to anybody without any problems. Another scenario where Ha'oretz will be reliable, in case he was delivering a bucket or any barrel that is mixed with kodesh and tumo. with items that belongs to the offerings in the temple and tumo. Since he is reliable on the items that are kodesh, he will be reliable. The reliability and credit and trust will be expanded towards the Truma as well. Though that on wines and oil they are reliable, when it comes to the kelim, to the utensils, even utensils of kodesh, they won't be reliable. However, in Yerushalayim, given the fact that in Yerushalayim was no factories that they were producing earthworth of clay cheres, so for that reason they were not imposed the gzeiro to Yerushalayim. And as far as the jurisdiction of Yerushalayim, it starts from a city that it is called Moidois. From inside the city, they will be reliable, and outside the city, they won't be reliable. There is another exception for a person to not suspect any Am Ha'oretz involvement when he is purchasing the dishes directly from the kivshon, directly from the factory, and the reason again because they not imposed the gzeiro for those kelim that are coming from the kivshon. Another exception is the time when Kol Israel Chaverim, the entire Jewish people, are being viewed as careful and pious in regard to Tumo and Taharo, and this is the time of the Regel, the time of the high holidays, because everybody purifies themselves and they are heading towards Beis HaMikdash in the Regel. However, after the Regel, everything goes back to its original state, and indeed, after any Regel, any holiday in Beis HaMikdash, they used to dip all the utensils in the temple due to the suspicion and for the reality that Amei Ha'oretz were actually touching them throughout the Regel. Despite all the distrust and suspicion, if Am Ha'oretz declared that he is pure from any contamination of a dead body, tumas mes, I will treat him as a tomei only of tumas medras, which is a lower level of tumo than a tumas meis, which is a tumas erev only. However, if he was silent and he did not declare anything, so then automatically I will view all his utensils, his garment, as contaminated also in tumas meis, and I will require the general process of tumas meis, which includes a hazoyo, a sprinkling of the water in the 3rd and the 7th days. In the 3rd chapter of lesson 216, the Rambam deals with different levels of tumo, of earnworth, that were given to the possession of Am Ha'oretz. So when he gives him for deposit, a full deposit, I will treat the ware and the utensils as they are exposed to the most severe tumo, tumas mes and tumas medras, with all the implications that are derived from it. If, however, he was just presenting the utensils in front of him and all he asked him, guard me these utensils, they will be contaminated only in Tumas Medras, but they won't be exposed to Tumas Meis. If a person left his own utensils in public places like a shul, and even in a Beis Merchatz, which is a Beth house, he came back and he found the same position they were, they will remain in the Chazaka of Tahara, they will remain pure, due to the belief, to the assumption that a person won't touch objects that don't belong to him. And if he found them in the same position, he left them. Obviously, nobody touched them. There is another rule of thumb when it comes to the reliability and trust. How far will I trust that an object was not touched by a Mo'oretz? And the rule of thumb, as long as I have a good reason to think that a Am Ha'oretz who was there would be deterring and under a sufficient deterrence to touch it, since he is suspecting that the person, the owner of those items, will come soon, as long as this deterrence exists, so the presumption will be that the kli, the utensils, are tohir, are pure. And here is a few examples. When a chover is being hosted in a house of Am Ha'oretz, so those utensils which are right under his bed, or bottles and shoes or any items that are right in front of him, they will remain pure. The reason? Because the host, which is Am Ha'oretz, will be afraid to touch them, because he thinks he has the deterrence by him thinking that soon he will wake up and he will see me. As a result of this deterrence, it will remain pure. Same applies the opposite. When the host is a chover and a Mo'oretz is the guest in the house of the chover, so he will cause tumo only to the bed and to the erect area where he can stretch in his hand outside the bed. Another example, even when a chover gives to a Mo'oretz the keys of his own house to guard them, the contents of the house will remain tohir. The reason? Because all he gave him is the achrayus, the liability of the key, but not the contents of the house. Another example, if a rooftop of a chover is right next to a rooftop of Am Ha'oretz, so depends. If the rooftop of the chover is higher than the rooftop of the Am Ha'oretz, so the contents that are placed on this rooftop will remain tohir. The reason? Since the Am Ha'oretz will be deterred to stretch his hand towards the peiros or the property which is on a higher level, because then it will be obviously that he is in a transpassing the area that don't really belong to him, which is called nitfas olov kiganov. It's a term that makes obvious that he is entering to a property that is not his. What is in case that the rooftop of the Am Ha'oretz is on the same or a higher level than the Talmid Chacham? So by him stretching down and taking from the fruits that below is not being viewed as going out from his property, and in such a case, the peiros will be tomei. The same principle will apply also when there is 2 yards and one is external, the other one is internal. If the internal belongs to the chover, the peiros will be tohir. The reason, because obviously when a person enters from a external yard into the internal yard, if he doesn't own it, he immediately being perceived as a thief, as a robber, a bandit, and so on. For that reason, they will remain tohir.